I tell you, that opening, that's why I love that opening. It says it all, because we have too many people who think of themselves as colored folks rather than as men and women. And until, you know what? And I love that movie because really some of the mindset of some of the people, until they, I mean, it's so old and antiquated. And trust me, I don't want to sound like somebody who don't understand the past, because you have to recognize that. You have to recognize it. But there is a new generation, there's a new way of thinking. And some of it's bad. Not all of it's good. Some of it's bad. I mean, like some of these shootings and some of this craziness is bad, it's horrible. But until, and I have Senator COONS on, until we start thinking about manufacturing jobs, until we start thinking about different ways of creating jobs in our community, we're gonna have the same old problems. Before I go to Senator COONS, let me make a few announcements. Some things that I've heard. I've been off the air, I was off the air last week, so I had to play the Jim Gilliam tape, Senior. And let me commend him and thank him again. And Edith Pritchett and myself decided, and Edith's gonna help me out, we decided to have a dinner for any members 70 years or older who are Monday Club members, 70 and older, and just honor them for some of the things that they stood for guys like me, like the Herman Holloway Seniors, like the Jim Gilliams, like the Al Plans, the Jim Seals, a lot of people who I respect an awful lot. Also, I want to commend Julius Cephas. Julius Cephas was just nominated for Man of the Year down at the Port of Wilmington. And I've read something in the paper. That's one thing that we've gotten right, that we keeping the jobs down at the port.
The jobs at the port.
And Julius went through a lot of BS, and people were throwing darts at him. And I know, shit, it put him in the hospital. I don't know if I should say that, slipped out. Shoots, and put him in the hospital. But he fought a good fight. So commend. And I saw my girl Tanny Washington in the paper today as the fashion plate Tanny Washington. Tanny was styling and profiling. You know, a funny thing happened. The mayor's gonna be on my show next week. I got a lot of things to ask the mayor. I hear that Pastor D just got hired by the city of Wilmington to help with the fighting of some of the crime in the city. I hope they give him a budget, because I don't know how he's gonna go out there and do it by himself. He's gonna have to have a staff, but that's beyond my pay grade. I hear a lot of things. I hear that there's gonna be some shuffling in the Parks and Recreation Department, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I also heard, and this is funny, I hear that Theo Gregory, the council president, and the mayor, Dennis Williams, got into a real shouting match, that it almost came to like squaring up. I think the mayor was in one of those gangs in Riverside, and you know, Theo Gregory's an ex-football player. I wonder how that would have made it. I'm gonna ask the mayor, I might ask him can I promote the fight if they're gonna fight? I'd like to be the promoter. That'd be like Don King.
Norman, I thought you were a peacemaker.
Well,
now you're Don King taking odds.
Well, Don King won on. He never lost. He won with both of them. I didn't say it was going to be a peaceful. Man, these guys, both of them are older. They both probably miss each other the whole time and just fall out. How you doing, Senator?
I'm doing just fine.
How you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing fine.
Let me begin the show. First of all,
thanks for that clip. You know, if today was Nelson Mandela's final funeral at his home, at his resting place, and you opened with a fairly powerful reflection on what it means to move past the age, the generation when we thought of ourselves purely in terms of our race. We saw each other in terms of race, and we had difficulty living past it, seeing past it, and really making justice real. I just wanted to start for a minute saying thank you both for the opening, and we had a conversation beforehand.
Well, you know, speaking of that opening, and speaking of that opening in Mandela, because I do believe this, that when Sidney Poitier shot that film, I think it was like in the 60s or probably 70s.
60s.
And he was going to date a white woman, and his father was like telling him what to do. And he was telling his father, see, that's your problem. You look at yourself as a colored man. I look at myself as a man. And that's how I do. I look at myself as a man. Me and my friend Wayne Jefferson, I think Wayne was thought he hit the number or something. He called me up and said, man, I'm not a colored man no more. I said, what are you talking about? He got the story all wrong. He had the opening all wrong. But Nelson Mandela stood for a lot. And I was given the opportunity. I don't know if you know this. It was me, the mayor, Stephanie Bowden, Ted Blunt, and some others. We went to South Africa right after apartheid. Wow. And I got a chance to visit Soweto, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Sun City, Pretoria. Matter of fact, I flew over to Cape Town by myself without the group. And I never saw, I mean, the beaches were so beautiful.
It's an amazing
Senator,
country.
you've been there.
Yeah, it's an amazing country.
Got a chance to go by Nelson Mandela's house. So,
In Soweto, his
it's,
original.
in Soweto, his original house. I mean, it was amazing. And I had one of the original ballots, but it got destroyed in water.
Oh,
And wow, so I certainly commend a lot of stuff that Nelson Mandela did.
It's amazing.
You did a lot of traveling. Tell me a little bit of some of the traveling you did.
Well, I'm now the chair of the Africa Subcommittee on Foreign Relations, and one of the trips I've taken is to return to both Kenya and South Africa and to visit with the current governments and to try and strengthen our relationships. But as you may remember, I had what was for me a very formative experience in Kenya in 1984 and then in South Africa in 1987. I worked for Desmond Tutu on the South African Council of Churches during the height of the state of emergency when the apartheid regime declared martial law and rounded up thousands and thousands of people, including a lot of ministers. And it was a very tense and difficult and ugly time, and it really shaped me in a lot of ways. I met some remarkable people.
So you meant
Desmond I did not
Tutu?
mean Mandela. Mandela was
but you meant
in
Tutu.
prison the whole time I worked for Desmond Tutu.
Wow.
He actually helped me write a sermon which I got to deliver at a township church in Khayelitsha. That was a really powerful experience for me.
Well, let me, like I said, I was over there. I mean, it was a different.
It's an amazing country.
But it was, as a black person, right? I remember, and Stephanie and Ted Blunt, they were probably there because I was wearing the African clothing, and people were actually asking me like, well, could you go do that? I was like, who the hell are you talking to? Because I still was thinking of them in America, and they weren't that far removed from apartheid. So I witnessed it, up front and close. So you witnessed it even deeper.
In full force. I mean, it was, I was there when it was at its ugliest and most violent. About 2,000 people were killed by the South African police the year that I was there, and there were riots almost every day.
So you was over Cape Town and all that?
In Cape Town and Johannesburg.
Wasn't the beaches over Cape Town are beautiful? I never seen it.
Clifton Beach.
I never seen anything like the black sand.
Yep.
And just to imagine, people were deprived the opportunity to do that. Yeah. I mean, in the palace at Sun City, we ate dinner there in Sun City. I mean, it was amazing.
That's the Las Vegas of South Africa. I didn't go, but I
dab on
I wasn't spending my
craps,
time going to casinos.
Let me say this, it's incredible, right? And I want to say this, and you're not saying this. I want to say I'm proud of what you're doing, first of all. I think that the Democratic Party made a calculated move and I'm going all the way back. And this is Norman Olive speaking. This is not you speaking. Only way they're going to get you out of that seat if you retire, because, in my opinion, because you're doing such an exceptional job, and you've strategically moved up the ladder in the leadership ladder. And I was at the event, a fundraiser for you, when Senator Schumer, and he was singing your praises. Tell me about some of the leadership stuff. I see someone's calling, but call when we put the number up. Tell me about some of your leadership posts that you got going on now.
Well, I serve on the Judiciary, Budget, Appropriations, and Foreign Relations Committees. And getting onto appropriations was a great opportunity for Delaware. Senator Carper serves on Finance, which sets all the tax rules and all the priorities in terms of Medicare and Medicaid. Appropriations controls all federal spending. So between those two, we now have a chance between Senator Carper and myself to really do more for Delaware than I was able to do in the previous 3 years. I was appointed to the Budget Conference Committee, and as you may know, we'll probably vote that out this week. I would expect Tuesday or Wednesday this week.
What is the Budget Conference Committee?
Well, the House and the Senate both passed their own versions of the budget of what we ought to be doing with the federal government 9 months ago now, but we were blocked from going to conference for months and months by a few Republican senators who objected every time we tried to resolve them. The way this works is that the Senate passes its budget framework, the House passes its budget framework, and they're very different. They're Republican and Democratic. They have very different views about Medicare, Medicaid, taxes, spending, programs, all sorts of things. The way you resolve that is by having a conference committee where a few from each side sit down around a big table and hammer it out over a couple of weeks. The staff spent a lot of time working, and the members sort of resolved the final details. We came to an agreement that was just announced last week, and the House has now adopted it by an overwhelming majority. It replaces some of the cuts from the sequester, some of the spending cuts, with new revenue that's being raised by selling off. There's a wide range of It's $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and pretty soon you get to $65 billion. There's a lot of different provisions that we're using to reduce spending in smarter ways than the across-the-board sequester, and to raise revenue, mostly through new license and fee provisions. Things like charging $5 more for the TSA for an airplane ticket, that kind of thing.
Let me ask you another question while we're on this issue. I've read something where the president, where the Senate, where you guys voted. I guess it's kind of unprecedented because some of his appointments, especially judges' appointments and everything,
Have
just
been held up for
just
months
been
and
held up
months
for
and
no.
months.
I mean, not even debate, just kind of BS by some of the guys in the Republican. And you guys said this is the first time that you guys had to make this maneuver in years.
We changed the filibuster rule. And the Republicans in the Senate are very angry.
What happened with that?
But we, frankly, after 3 years of filibuster after filibuster,
So they just want to put in any judges to anybody.
it's not true. To be fair, they were ultimately confirming secretaries and judges and mid-level folks, but they were slow walking them. 6 months, 9 months, a year wait in order to fill positions. We had
Is that common? Was that common like
No.
with George Bush?
It has steadily gotten worse between Clinton to Bush to Obama. The number of filibusters, the length of the delay in filling positions, and the level of the positions delayed. I'm not going to say that this is all the Republicans' fault. There were Democrats who blocked some judges under George Bush. But I've only been there 3 years. What I know is the 3 years that I've been there, President Obama has not been able to fill many senior positions in his administration. So we'd have folks come over to testify from the Department of Justice or Department of Defense or Department of Commerce, and there would be a whole series of vacant positions.
But that's dangerous, right?
One of the things that Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, who's the leader of the Senate Democrats, told us that sort of finally pushed him over the edge was having the Secretary of Defense call him and say, I can't run the Air Force. I don't have a confirmed Secretary of the Air Force. And of the next 5 positions, several of them are vacant and have been vacant for months.
Wow.
We've got to resolve this one way or the other.
See, the way I look at it, Senator, I mean, they're playing political games at my expense, at my life.
They have been shutting down.
Am I right? That's theoretically right.
They've been shutting down the government by another means, by slow walking all the appointments and preventing this president from having his team. He's in his second term. I mean, he's nearly a year into his second term. It's like playing a baseball game where you don't get someone on third base and you don't get someone in the outfield and you don't get someone playing shortstop, but we're still playing and we're playing by the rules. They slowed things up so much that I think they were breaking the rules. The problem here is that I'm trying to see how this gets better. The next time the Republicans take control, they'll probably go a step further and be even tougher on us than we've been on them. So
too much gamesmanship.
I am spending time trying to build friendships and talk to Republicans to see if we can't bring this back together, because it is very difficult for us to move any bills at this point.
Tell me about this. I've been reading a lot about your manufacturing jobs bill, and I for one, I mean, I'm from the outside looking in, but I think it's a great idea. I mean, I was speaking about that on TV before. I think that we have to start going back to some grassroots kind of jobs where people who don't have a master's degree in psychology could get a basic job and get a good living.
Right.
What exactly is that?
When we were coming up, you could get a job at Chrysler or at the GM plant, at the Avon plant, at the steel mill, and you needed to have finished high school, maybe, but you did not need a college degree. There are hundreds in Delaware of vacant positions that could be filled if you had the right skills and training, and if you had community college level training at your workplace. And there are lots of there's lots of companies across the United States that have vacant, unfilled positions. And there are other countries, Germany principal among them, that have real partnerships between their high schools and their community colleges and their manufacturers, where you literally go from high school to the workplace, and then you get skills training on the job and after the job. So you end up earning a technical degree while you're working. You don't finish high school and then kind of go off and study, try and find a job that is of some interest. Other countries don't have the big disconnect between high school and technical training and further education that we do.
And again, I totally agree with that, but how do we compete against the Chinas, against some of these third world countries who are paying their people?
Let me give you an example.
Like 10 cents or 20 cents.
There's a company.
And we just got a bill just raising the minimum wage.
There's a I'll talk about Miller Metal if I could for a minute.
Sure.
In Bridgeville, Delaware, company called Miller Metal got help from the federal government through something called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Connected to the University of Delaware, they came and looked at how they had their factory laid out. They looked at how they handled their inventory and their orders, and they looked at what machinery they had and what they needed. And the state gave them a training grant, and they improved the skills of everybody who was working there, and they improved the throughput, so the efficiency and the productivity of everybody who worked there. The last time I went to visit, they had just gone head-to-head with a Chinese stamping mill for a contract to make it's a very simple piece of metal. I've got it sitting on my desk. It's folded in half. It's got a hole here, a certain type of cut here, and a line here, a line here. Right. So it's a bracket, and they're selling thousands of them. They beat a Chinese metal stamping mill to get the contract for this part, and it's employing a whole floor full of people.
That's great.
It is possible for us to beat the Chinese in manufacturing, but we've got to work together. We've got to be smarter. We've got to get skills training. We've got to get access to export markets. We've got to get access to capital. And we have to have a strategy. We have to have a federal government that supports the private sector in being competitive in export.
So this is years away.
I hope not. We've got 6 bipartisan bills that I'm working on with Senator Stabenow of Michigan, Senator Brown of Ohio, those are 2 Democrats, Senator Blunt of Missouri, and Senator Graham of South Carolina, those are 2 Republicans. And probably Senator Bozeman of Arkansas is going to make up the 6th of this group. We've got a whole menu of bills that deal with skills. Well, these are important issues. These are the sorts of things folks want to see us work together on.
Right.
Putting young people to work, growing manufacturing jobs. Now, under this administration, we've grown 500,000 manufacturing jobs in the United States over the last 3 years. It is the strongest that sector has been this century. The previous 10 years, we lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. So we've really had a significant loss. It's starting to come back a little bit, but we can and should do more to strengthen it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined me, I'm having Senator Chris COONS on, and I hope you're following this dialogue. I think it's critical and important to our community when we talk about jobs. I'm following around the country where everyone is raising salaries. I mean, minimum wage, which is good. But if we raise the minimum wage, right? Say $8.25, and I know these guys, these capitalists and guys, these Wall Street guys, they're looking at it and saying, "Well, wow, my company that I've just taken over, I can get that same T-shirt made in China from workers who are for 50 cents.
Right.
Why send it to this factory where these guys are making $10 an hour, where I could get it for 10 cents? Am I right?
Right. Couple of things. First, yes, there has been a big wage gap between the United States and China over the last 25 years. That's
Absolutely.
a lot of why these manufacturing jobs went overseas. But as wages have improved in places like Mexico and China, that gap isn't as big as it was.
Okay.
There's also companies that are bringing employment back to the United States because they found in China they were getting ripped off in terms of their plans, their innovations, their ideas. Their intellectual property was getting stolen. They don't always get their money back out, right? You invest money, you open a new plant, you hire people in China, you make a profit, and sometimes it's difficult to get that money back out of other countries. Right? So if you have a manufacturing plant in the Philippines or in Vietnam or in Thailand or in China, sometimes you lose your intellectual property, you can't get your money back out of it, and your engineering and design people typically stay here. So as you're developing and improving, if you're talking about printing T-shirts, yes, those jobs are probably not coming back. But if you're talking about building automobiles, or if you're talking about inventing a new type of cell phone, you're talking about producing high-quality computers, those are jobs that we can compete and win for. Frankly, the metal stamping jobs in Bridgeville that I was just describing for Miller Metal, partly that was made possible by a state-of-the-art machine that they invested in. So with the same number of workers, they can be more productive.
The reason why I went there, right? Because
the wage gap's a real challenge.
And I watched something like, I think 60 Minutes like 7, 8 years ago when they were going, Nike, were in all these plants over Indonesia, wherever they were. And just, there's no way we could compete. And they were challenging Michael Jordan and all these guys. And then fast forward, like to the Olympics just passed. We walking around with U.S. shirts on made in China.
Made in China, yep.
That's a little embarrassing, Senator.
One of the things that we as Americans can do.
Is that embarrassing?
It is. I thought that, in particular, that incident was embarrassing. But one of the things we can do as Americans is go look for labels that say made in the USA and vote with our dollars. Buy American-made cars.
Okay.
Buy American-made clothes. Buy American-made products, right? I've urged, when you go to Kohl's, when you go to Walmart, which I don't, when you go to Costco, when you go other places, look for an American label. If you feel strongly about employing Americans, part of what is driving all of this offshoring is that as consumers, we buy the things that are the cheapest. And those are the things that are made in China. Not always the highest quality, not always the safest for our consumers or our kids, but they are often the cheapest. Last point on this, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Germany, within Europe, Germany has the strongest environmental protections and the strongest labor protections, and they have very high pay rates. They are also the strongest manufacturing country in Europe. They manufacture a huge amount of goods and export a lot of products. So
I didn't know that, and I'm supposed to be going over there.
It's not impossible to be a high-wage, high-quality country and still have a strong manufacturing sector. But their government works very closely with their private sector and invests in things like infrastructure, research and development, and export promotion, which we should be doing more of in this country.
Okay, let's change the subject a little bit to Obamacare and healthcare. And I have to say it's a little confusing to me also.
Yes.
And maybe it's me, but it looked like my healthcare, it went up, my costs. Is it because like middle America, right? We're subsidizing the cost for lower and upper, the middle class guy? It feels like that to me.
You're now getting your health care through the exchange?
I have Highmark.
Okay.
But
So
I think my costs went up a couple dollars.
the Affordable Care Act is requiring insurance companies to provide insurance that is real. That is not just broader coverage plans, but that doesn't fall out from under you when you need it. We have to go back a couple years and talk about how the situation was with health insurance. Because you and I both know people who worked all their lives, had insurance through their employer, but when they really needed it, it wasn't there. So if they had a child born who was in the NICU for 6 weeks, they suddenly discovered that, oh, there's a lifetime cap on your insurance. Sorry, we're only paying $50,000 and then you're done. Or if their spouse got cancer, lost their job, got a new job, they were told, no, you're not insurable anymore. You have a pre-existing condition. Or if you had a child who turned 25, 26, no, you're not insurable. You're not on your parents' insurance. Those are all things the Affordable Care Act fixed. So you cannot
you can have
but it is more expensive. It is more expensive for everybody to have a system where you can't be discriminated against because you have a pre-existing condition.
Right.
Kids up to 26 are automatically covered on their parents' health care program. It is no longer a pre-existing condition to be a woman. You can't discriminate based on gender in terms of coverage.
Right.
And there's more preventive health care services available through insurance rather than only providing health care through the emergency room for lots of people. So the Affordable Care Act, which was passed before I got to Congress, but which we are working hard to implement responsibly, for some people will make insurance available for the first time. For some people will make more affordable insurance available, and for some people, me included, will raise our rates. All the members of Congress have to get their health care through the Affordable Care Act exchanges. And Senator Carper and I have enrolled. There was an article in the paper about it the other day. And most of us, I mean, my wife and I, we have 3 kids. Our costs went up.
Senator,
many of the folks in my office, their costs went down.
Yeah, but Senator, is it my imagination or is this real that it appears to me that the healthcare providers are in cahoots in monopolizing this thing because maybe they were for it or against it, but now they're saying, okay, we got you by the throat, and I'm going to talk to you, you talk to, and if us 4 are in this game together, we're still going to control it, and we're controlling costs. That's happening.
Insurance commissioners around the country are supposed to be closely watching the rates of increase of insurance costs and managing as consumer advocates.
I understand what you're saying, but you understand what I'm saying.
Preventing over, yes, there's a lot.
It's happening.
I think a lot of us look at the healthcare system, particularly in Delaware, and say there's relatively few providers of insurance and there's relatively few large hospital systems and healthcare systems. And so I hear from constituents a lot of concern that we have a very highly concentrated health insurance market in Delaware. In Philadelphia, they've got a dozen hospitals and several different providers. There's less competition in Delaware than there is in Pennsylvania, Maryland, or New Jersey.
Very rarely do you get a chance to speak to a U.S. senator on TV and get a chance to gouge him. How did you feel, or how does that work when the government shuts down? And that happened like 6 months ago. I mean,
it wasn't that long ago.
Well, 3 months ago, right?
For 17
A
days.
very scary time for a lot of people, because I had friends, who work in D.C., and a lot of them were laid off, furloughed, whatever. And then they said, okay, we will give you back pay. But nobody from the House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, you guys weren't missing any checks. So I think the next time they do that, even Republicans, Democrats, whoever say, okay, if we're going to shut down government, it should be a total shutdown. No one should get paid. Am I wrong? Am I wrong for feeling?
I gave back my pay.
Good for you. See,
for the duration of the shutdown.
For real?
I just thought that was the right thing to do. If we weren't open, I shouldn't be getting paid. And I did not get paid after we reopened. Many of the employees of the House and Senate were paid afterwards, but
But
why
do they go? I mean, why we go to that extreme? I mean, come on.
This was, I think, the height of irresponsibility. A very small number of Republican senators took to the floor and said, we are so offended by the Affordable Care Act. We are convinced that it's the worst infringement on liberty in American history. We are going to shut the government down if they don't repeal it. Now, you know, the House of Representatives has voted, I think it's 42 times, to repeal the Affordable Care Act. The Senate has not voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and the President has made it clear he's not going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So this was a strategy that was never going to succeed.
Had nothing to do with the budget.
No. This was Senator Cruz and a number of his followers saying, we refuse to allow the government to stay open. We got to the end of the fiscal year. September 30 is the end of the fiscal year. And they refused to approve a new budget, a continuing resolution to keep the government open, unless we would repeal the Affordable Care Act. And that was never going to succeed. So we went 17 days with a government that was largely shut down, except for emergency and vital functions, you know, like Department of Defense and things like that. I do a fair amount on the Foreign Relations Committee of meeting with foreign heads of state. Imagine the impact that it's had on our reputation around the world. There's no other governments that shut their country down, their government, their official government down for 2 weeks over a budget fight. And so several folks we met with, ambassadors and heads of state, said, "What we don't understand. What's going on? What is this fight over exactly?" And the problem is you really can't explain it. Far more importantly, I went to Dover Air Force Base. Hundreds of airmen and their spouses were so angry they could hardly speak.
My next door neighbor was in that situation.
They were furloughed in August, right? They took a 20% pay cut for 3 pay periods, and then the same group was furloughed for those 17 days. I mean, most of these guys are veterans who've previously served in uniformed active duty and are now civilians working at Dover Air Force Base. These are not glamorous jobs. These are men who are, you know, working on air freight and on maintenance and on security and on, you know, base housing issues, and many of them work in the mortuary and provide services and support for the remains of fallen Americans. I mean, they do honorable, important work, and we're asking them to take a pay cut because in the Congress we can't agree to a budget. I mean, this was really upsetting.
Inconceivable.
This was really upsetting.
Is this a fair question to ask, right? You know, Roman Cal, Republican, a good friend of mine, he would call in and say, Norm, our state, right, is filled with Democrats running the state except for Tom Wagner. And it appears to me, and then the News Journal and a lot of other, if you look at some of the consumer reports, say that our job situation is one of the worst in the
No, it's
country.
not one of the worst.
But
There's several other states that have unemployment that got higher than ours and is still higher than ours.
how do we fix it, though?
But-
say if we, I mean,
But it is a good point that there's still 30,000 Delawareans unemployed, many of them long-term unemployed
Right.
now. One of the things
and
that was
most of them in the minority community.
the minority community has taken a much harder hit through the recession and the recovery. Absolutely. And there was a great...
How do we fix it, though? I mean, maybe through the manufacturing thing and some
I
other
think
things?
one of the areas where Delaware has a specific advantage is in manufacturing because we've got a strong port. We're right on the backbone of both the East Coast I-95 and we've got great rail access. So unlike a lot of other parts of the country, we've got access to export markets, to import opportunities. We've got a good financial services community here. But we need to pay attention to the small companies, the companies that have potential to grow quickly, that can help create new jobs. So I have a couple of different bills. These are bipartisan bills that are designed to help with startup companies, with research and development costs, with clean energy finance, and with export promotion and with access to higher education. All of these are things that the federal, state, and local governments can be doing to support the private sector in growing. The United States is an incredibly entrepreneurial and inventive society. We've got folks who want to start businesses left, right, and center. The fight we've been having in Washington the last 3 years has been focusing on reducing our deficits, on cutting spending. And we do need to cut spending. We do need to reduce our deficit.
We got to grow the economy there.
We've done it sharper and faster than is best for growing our economy. So these two things are in tension. If you cut spending on education, on research, on infrastructure, and on export promotion, then you're going to cut your deficit and you're going to get your balance sheet better to being healthy, but you're not going to grow as quickly. An austerity approach as opposed to a growth approach is less likely to be successful, at least in the short run.
Yeah. Let me ask you one more question before I open the phone lines. I mean, this conversation is really flowing. That's why I'm running a little bit over time. I think that what we have to do is start moving, like I said earlier, just more American. Just start thinking, how can we get more Americans jobs? But and when I say this, let me go back to the city of Wilmington, right? You're not far removed from being the president of the council, the county executive,
right?
And now you're the U.S. senator. How do you feel about when you read about the crime and the shootings and killings in the city of Wilmington?
It worries me a lot.
And have you reached out to the mayor?
We've met several times.
To try to help this. And do you think we've gotten to the point where we need federal intervention?
I've offered.
Am I right? You understand my question?
Absolutely. I'm a Wilmingtonian. I've lived in Wilmington since 1992. My wife and kids live in Wilmington, and I hear from neighborhood friends, from community leaders, and from business owners regularly about how concerned they are. We're on track for a record year in terms of shootings in the city of Wilmington. That's not good for those families, for victims, for neighborhoods, for communities, or for our reputation. When the city of Wilmington gets ranked in Parenting Magazine as one of the most dangerous places in America to raise a child, that's very concerning. Mayor Williams has a positive attitude and is very actively engaged. I've met with him several times. Very soon after he became mayor, he came down and spent a day with me and my folks, and we introduced him to all the different people in the Department of Justice and different federal law enforcement entities and outside groups that could be helpful. And I'm doing my best, as is the rest of the congressional delegation and the governor, to be supportive and to ask, how can we help? What resources can we offer? The mayor's got a tough job. I'm not going to criticize him. I think it's important that we support him.
I didn't ask you to criticize him. I asked you, are you reaching out? And you just
Absolutely.
Sounds to me like you said.
It is my job
is it
to
time for a
deliver
different
federal
approach?
resources with him to support the plan that he and council come up with together for strengthening the police department.
Okay.
And I think this is a tough time to deliver new federal resources because we're cutting spending
Didn't you
across the board,
Didn't you offer? Didn't you offer the county police when you were there?
Yes.
You think it's time to do that again?
You have to do that in a way that is respectful, because I
didn't say be disrespectful. I say help.
Yes.
You understand my point? I mean, I shouldn't say I wouldn't put you on the spot because I don't care about putting you on the spot because it's lives.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And we shouldn't sugarfoot or play games, and people who watch Community Crossfire know I'm going to ask tough questions.
One of the things I was proudest of as county executive was that we got the state and county police units, drug, homicide, special units really working together. And they got past the brown and blue thing. There had been some tensions between the county police who wear brown uniforms and the state police who wear blue uniforms, who had not really partnered in the Route 9 corridor and the Route 13 corridor just outside the city. There were jurisdictional tensions. They really hadn't worked as closely together previously as we were able to get them to, and I thought that was big progress. Doing that with the city in a way that we actually, all the agencies work together, share information, share resources. We're protecting one community. There isn't some big line. When you drive from Wilmington out to the county and into the city, you know, it's not as if you go through a great big wall. The crime crosses boundaries, crosses neighborhoods, and so I think policing resources ought to be available across the communities to make sure that all of us are safe.
You brought up Senator Cruz's name a few times early on. Do you think guys like Senator Cruz, the Tea Party, Rush Limbaugh's, Sean Hannity's, Sarah Palin's of the world, do you think they're dangerous? Or is that a strong word?
That's a strong word.
What do you think? I mean, their ideology, do you think is counterproductive?
I'll say this. Senator Cruz, who is a very bright man, very aggressive man,
right?
I thought his action in leading the effort to shut down the federal government and his action in arguing about possibly defaulting on the sovereign debt of the United States was not responsible and is very different from what I would argue. We have differences of opinion. He's a very capable advocate for his point of view. I just don't share it in any way. But I think it's important when folks elect us to go to Washington, they expect us to compromise. If you read the Constitution, it is all about compromise. You can't get anything done in the American political system without compromise. So what strikes me as odd is how the folks from the Tea Party who claim to love the Constitution so much and are so fierce about defending our Constitution don't embrace what is its most basic structural spirit, which is that you have to be able to compromise between the House and the Senate and the legislative and the executive, or nothing really happens. We've got folks who are my way or the highway, a small number in the Tea Party, who have been very difficult to work with, frankly. It's been a real challenge. But I try, they try. Hopefully, with the support of the people, we'll all get together and we'll make some progress in the coming
We just
times.
opened the phone lines. If you have a question or comment for Senator Chris Coons, please call in. The numbers on the thing. I think it's sometimes, when you come in as a U.S. Senator, the conversation is different for callers than being a county executive or a mayor, because people can feel it, feel you. And I've had these kind of conversations before. I said, like, call a governor sometimes. Call the senator, your U.S. senator, not your state senator. But they would call a city council person, the council president. It's never.
Well, while we're waiting for the first call,
There's a call.
One of the things I want to emphasize is constituent service. I want people to call my office. If there are things we can possibly do with foreclosure, with Social Security, with veterans benefits, with connecting to our job fairs, with things that we can help with, that's the most important part of the job, is helping Delawareans. The thing that makes my whole week. I get a weekly report on what's the single best constituent case we've solved this week, where we've really helped somebody. There's a lot we can do. So I want to make sure we put up the website and the phone number before we finish.
You want to go give it to them? The website and the phone number? You sure can. And ladies and gentlemen, somebody had to call. Somebody did call and hang up. But
Once I went off on that whole thing.
Yeah, I know this, man. Wow, you're going off for that. Somebody got to challenge the guy. It's funny. And then somebody texted me and said, "Well, Cincinnati's losing 21-0." I'm like, how depressing. My whole conversation is like, huh? But
he's a Bengals fan.
Oh, big time Bengals. I'm like Cincinnati big time. So, but what has been one of your biggest challenges thus far as a U.S. Senator?
I commute almost every day, and I enjoy that I'm one of the few senators who gets a chance to see my kids.
Do you expect a primary?
I hope not.
It keeps hanging up.
But
Maybe I don't know if it's not working or not, because I'm getting phone calls, but it keeps hanging up for some reason. What you say?
I'm up for re-election in 2014. This is when I'm running for my first full 6-year term. I'm looking forward to the election. I'm hoping to be re-elected. I'd be grateful for the support.
I'd be surprised if you're not.
But you can't take anything for granted.
It's hanging up.
You cannot take anything for granted. So.
Do you think you have a general election?
I don't have an opponent yet, but absolutely I expect I will.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, work that time. Maybe I got to hit this side. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask him how he feels about the data center down Newark at the old Chrysler site.
Do you have an opinion on the data center down at Chrysler?
That is a local issue, but in general, from what I've learned about it, it seems to me an opportunity for us to put people to work, to grow jobs, and to improve employment in a place that used to be an auto manufacturing site. I've been reassured by folks who work in the governor's environment in Denrec that it will not be overly polluting, that it will not be as burdensome on air emissions as the previous auto plant was. And it's my hope that we can find a way forward to build a data center that employs people, that creates long-term jobs and opportunity, and that doesn't unduly harm the neighbors surrounding it.
Why you take the number there? Yeah, that's a hot button issue.
Yes.
Are you calling from Newark?
Yes.
Or are you for it or against it?
For it, of course. Yeah, how can't you be? The tax base that it would generate and everything like that for the school district and everything else. Our state is really in need of the tax base. We really don't have that anymore.
Well, why, there's a lot of people down there against it. Why do you think that? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
You're going in and out, so I'll let you go ahead and go back to that.
No. I said a lot of people are against that that site down there, though, right?
Right. Yes, I believe so. Yes, I would hope it would go forward just for the tax base alone. Create jobs. That's what we need in this state. We have a small state. We should be able to get something going, and then have to think.
Okay.
It's not like a big pollution thing either, like things were in the past. Anything clean would help.
Okay, thank you. I guess you don't. Something's wrong with this phone tonight too. But you could still call and I try to get you on. I mean, the calls are coming in and they're going out. Do you miss those kind of issues? Because if you was county executive, you'd be right
absolutely.
right in the forefront of it.
No, there are days I miss being in the county, both because of the quality of the people I got to work with and because of how close you are to the issues. More than anything else, because as county executive, I was able to get things done. I didn't have to rely on 99 other people.
Are you still following local politics?
Somewhat. I have been so busy with the budget conference committee and with all the different stuff on Judiciary Committee that I am less day-to-day involved in local politics, but I try to follow the issues.
So you're on the Judiciary Committee?
Yes.
Is that the subcommittee or the committee?
I'm a member of the full committee, and I chair the subcommittee on courts and bankruptcy.
So how does that work? You're on the full committee. Alvin, why you take the number down? What happened? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm on the full committees of Foreign Relations, Judiciary, Budget, and Appropriations. I chair the subcommittee on Africa and the subcommittee on bankruptcy.
When a job come up for the Supreme Court, you have a vote?
Of course.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
I mean, do you just get, I thought you would have to be on the Senate for a little while to get appointment to that kind of seat.
I've been blessed.
Don't that usually happen?
Yes.
I mean, like Joe Biden did just come on. You've been a U.S. Senator for what? Like
3 years.
2 days?
3 years.
and you on the. I mean, like seriously. I'm kind of joking, but that a lot of stuff I've been following, like some of your appointments. I think there's
the Appropriations Committee.
Serious.
Was a welcome surprise and a great opportunity.
What has awed you since you've been in the U.S. Senate?
I got to have.
Have you flown on Air Force One yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I've been on Air Force Two.
Okay.
And that's something my mother's teased me about. Is why haven't you gotten to fly in Air Force?
You get a chance to go over and talk to the president in the White House and all that kind of stuff. That would awe me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
At some point, you're a U.S. Senator, so it's like the mayor got to talk to city council or the county council got to county. It's the same thing.
I got to have dinner with the president the same night that we took the votes on gun control issues, and it was a very difficult, very emotional vote. The president gave a press conference in the Rose Garden. He was as angry in public as I think I've ever seen him. He was very personally moved by the children who were murdered in Connecticut at Sandy Hook. And this was when we tried unsuccessfully to pass universal background checks. And it was literally half an hour after the vote that 12 of us sat down to dinner with him. And we mostly were there to talk about the budget and about our long-term direction, immigration reform, where we were going on these gun issues. And he was remarkable. He came in the room in as bad a mood, as depressed and upset as I think I've ever seen the man. And he was able to calm down, focus, engage. We had a 2-hour conversation, and he was bright and capable and focused in a way that was really impressive. It's moments like that that I'm left really quite struck by what he's able to do. Obviously, there's other times that have been not as impressive, or they've been difficult, or where we've disagreed on things.
Do you disagree a lot with him?
No, there's a few issues where we've really we're in different places on Iran and sanctions against Iran right now.
What exactly is that? What do you mean?
Well,
what's going on?
The administration was secretly negotiating with the Iranian government for a year, and it became public a few months ago. And they just signed an agreement in Geneva a few weeks ago, and they're asking all of us in the Senate to not impose any more sanctions and give them 9 months or a year to explore peace with the Iranians, and trusting them that they're not developing a nuclear weapon. Several times previously, the Iranians have used the cover of negotiations to conceal that they were actually continuing to develop nuclear weapons. And this is what happened with North Korea. We had real tough sanctions against North Korea under Bill Clinton, and they came to us and we agreed that we would lift our sanctions and they would give up developing nuclear weapons. Today, North Korea has a nuclear weapon.
But that guy's kind of thrown.
He is crazy. And a serious threat.
No,
and
seriously.
I take Iran much more seriously than I take North Korea.
Oh, for real?
So I am gravely worried about Iran and their threat to the region and to our vital ally, Israel. Absolutely.
Wow. Then we
I think they're a serious
sent in
threat.
Dennis Rodman over there to be a negotiator.
I'm not sure that Dennis Rodman was an official negotiator in North Korea. That was, I don't know how that happened. So there are issues
but
like
you know
that
what,
where we differ.
But you know what? I mean, I don't want to lose track here. When we talk about security issues, right?
Yep.
And national, international security, that was serious with that interpreter.
Yes.
On stage.
Yes.
I mean, this guy had got a murder charge.
Yes.
Or allegedly. I say allegedly.
You're referring to at the Mandela funeral in Johannesburg.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was an interpreter standing within a few yards of
not
our
just
president and many
world
other
leaders.
presidents.
I mean, this guy could have just pulled out an Uzi and just started shooting people.
Very disconcerting.
You know what I mean? That's kind of crazy.
It was very disconcerting.
And when we and I was reading something, when we go over to other countries, we don't have the autonomy, right?
In some ways, the Secret Service has the opportunity to protect our president, but you know it's on their terms and on their turf. I got to travel with Secretary Clinton, Hillary Clinton, to Liberia to the inauguration of Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, and it was striking. There was a moment during the inauguration where they thought violence might break out. And there's a whole group of Secret Servicemen who just sort of shut down around Hillary and pulled her back. And we all kind of went, you know.
I mean,
it worked out. It was fine.
Because I mean, like even on with the president, right? What they were saying is they put this guy on a third row, right? So.
And our Secret Service is trusting that their Secret Service, or their equivalent, has vetted anybody who's within that.
But obviously they did not.
They did not, and that
because
was
this guy's on stage.
Yep.
And if he said he had a seizure, I mean,
suppose he had a mental health condition. Yeah.
Yeah, but my point is, suppose he had a real mental. I don't know.
Yeah.
How you doing? Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hey, hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I just tuned into your program, so I may have missed the information earlier. But Senator COONS, I wanted to ask, with the current proposed budget, I was wondering what your stand was on the Murray and Ryan budget proposal, and what we can do to. Is there such a thing as a line item veto that we can go through those things and cut out all the pork that seems to happen in those?
No. We don't have a line item veto at the federal level that would allow the president to go through appropriations bills and veto line items by line items. And I'm not sure if that was your whole question, but we do not currently have a federal line item veto.
Well, what is your stand on the current budget proposal?
You may have missed this part of the show. I'm on the Budget Conference Committee.
Right.
This budget proposal actually reduces the deficit, replaces the sequester cuts, which are across-the-board cuts, with smarter savings. And I think, frankly, it's also a positive for us to get anything done where Republicans and Democrats agree between the House and Senate. I was disappointed that so far we do not have an extension of unemployment insurance for the long-term unemployed. The other party did not agree to put that into this budget deal. And I was upset at some of the further sacrifices that federal employees, future federal retirees, are going to be asked to make in terms of their contributions. But frankly, that's in the essence of a compromise. There's things that I wanted in this deal that are not in there, and there's things that are in there that I didn't want in there. But at the end of the day, it passed the House last week by an overwhelming bipartisan margin, and I expect it will pass by a fairly strong bipartisan margin in the Senate this week because of the damage we've done to the country by shutting the government down, by having all these fiscal cliff, late night, last minute fights over the last 3 years. I think most of us see the value in our getting any positive deal done and avoiding a government shutdown in January.
And the real problem is you have some members out there, some people out there don't want any compromise. There's no compromise. Just shut down the government.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing too. Is that the hate factor against the president is pretty bad.
It's incredible. Yep. Hey, thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean he's right by that. Yes. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Good evening. I would like to know if someone has been in trouble and has had a felony and their record has been pardoned and moved for an expungement and you're having a very hard time trying to get a job here in Delaware. And I would like to know what Senator COONS could do in order to help that individual to get a job so that he'll be able to support his family and be a productive citizen.
Thank you for the call.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the call. We've hosted 13 different job fairs now up and down the state And we try to attract to these job fairs employers of every possible kind and background. We've had between 50 and 100 private and public sector employers at our job fairs, and they're free and open to the public. I'd encourage you to call Krista in my office at 573-6345 and let us see what we can do specifically, either to connect you to a state program through the Department of Labor or to make sure that you are on the list of folks who gets notice about our next job fair.
We're going to be tuning out in a few minutes, so I want to ask you another quick question. You know, about this whole Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
You know, you're impressed about my questions, man. I'm pretty
Good.
cool, right?
Good.
Pretty good, right?
Good. You're there.
Getting better.
You're there.
What do you think about that? I mean, why would we even be talking about voting rights in 2013? Don't that sound a little ludicrous, a little ridiculous, a little asinine?
It is. In 2012, we had people stand online 6 and 7 hours to vote. We had a dozen states that had problems administering the election in a free and fair way in their states, that tried to change the rules in terms of who had access to vote, that tried to impose additional restrictions in terms of IDs and so forth. And for the Supreme Court to strike down a section of the Voting Rights Act that makes it harder than ever for people to vote, I think is irresponsible. I introduced legislation to deal with that repeal of the Voting Rights Act section.
The Supreme Court? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Senator Coons, it's always a pleasure to hear all the great things that you're doing. This is Councilwoman Hanifa Shabazz calling, and thank you for the 13 job fairs you've been doing.
Thank you, Hanifa.
And it is a great opportunity for people to get out there and take advantage of the jobs. Can you tell us approximately how many people have actually gotten jobs from these fairs? I mean, I know that there's different people that are coming. How successful, can you share how successful people have been in getting employment through these job fairs?
I can tell you, Councilwoman, that there are dozens and dozens of people who have told us afterwards that they got employment, but I do not have a number across all the different job fairs. In many cases, we survey the employers afterwards, and we ask the folks who come to the job fairs to fill out a survey. Relatively few of the folks who come to the job fairs fill out a survey, stay in touch with us, and tell us whether or not they get an offer. We often get that information from employers, not from the folks who attended, if that makes sense. So I will say this, they've gotten steadily better, both in terms of how many people are coming and how many jobs are available. There are more and more jobs available. There are more people hired on the spot, and there are fewer people waiting in lines. When we first started doing these 3 years ago, it was frankly depressing. It was alarming. There were thousands of people coming, many of whom were in pretty desperate straits in their job searches. The more recent job fairs, more jobs available, more positive applicants, fewer folks, and a better ratio and better opportunities. We do have great examples of people who've actually been employed.
Thank you, Senator Coons, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned something this evening. Senator Coons is always good. I mean, he's the one guy who I like engaging because he has some good information. Tune in next week. We'll have the mayor on. I hope he will give us an update on the next battle with him and Theo Gregory, and see if I will be able to promote the fight. I want to see what's going on in the Park Recreation Division and his development. No, the police department. I mean, he and Christine Dunning. And also, congratulations to Julia Cephas again. Thank you so very much. And Tandy Washington, congratulations. Good. Was there anything else? Pastor D, I want to see what you're going to be doing in your job.
Thank you.
A lot.
Always good to be on.
Come on, let's play my ending with my man. Is it too late? I like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I'm saying you got to think of yourself as a man.